Now we've arrived at the reading and science section. It might seem odd that I group reading and science together, but they are actually very close, now more than ever. The difference between the SAT reading and ACT science is only a matter of degree, because they are both testing reading comprehension and they're both testing data interpretation. The ACT, the SSAT, and the ISEE will still test all of the reading in the regular, more traditional way, with no charts and graphs or any other visual data. Here are two examples of strictly reading comprehension, which is what would be found on the SSAT, ISEE, and in the ACT reading comprehension section. But we can also take a little bit of a closer look at these two passages where we see an ACT science passage above and below an SAT reading passage, both without visual data. The topic is on science for both of them, and with no charts, graphs, or any sort of math going on, they're pretty indistinguishable. Yes, the SAT one is harder in terms of reading comprehension and is more comparable to the ACT reading section. The point here I want to make is that both tests are testing the same fundamentals in one section or another, as we will see on the next two slides. So yes, these tests are not asking for a different type of fundamental, whether it be reading comprehension or visual data interpretation. However, the details, style, and construction that make the problems distinct are well noted and have given us at Ivy Bridge a chance to reveal the specific tricks and employ the most fitting strategies depending on the question. Which one of these questions do we think is an ACT science question and which one is an SAT reading question? They are both from the SAT reading section, which just drives home the point that on the SAT, on the reading section, we can see the exact same sort of stuff that we would see on an ACT science section question. I will forego a demonstration on visual interpretation strategies because the profile of a student who has a weakness for visual interpretation would nearly always choose to take the SAT because their visual interpretation questions are fewer and easier. And also for the sake of time and space, I will demonstrate our knowledge of the test maker's tricks and our strategies on reading comprehension with an SSAT or ISEE style passage because they are of course simpler and shorter, but are fundamentally no different than their bigger brothers, the SAT and the ACT. Here's the passage. Please take a moment and read through it if you would like. All right, let's take a look at the question now. The passage is primarily about which of the following. The first thing that we can notice is that this question is broad, and therefore the answer will need to be broad, not specific, not about a detail, even if it's a true detail. We have more specific strategies for the tricks, but the overall message comes back to where we began. Think like the test maker. What are they trying to do? What answers can they defend? Keeping in mind the question. Let's take a look at A. How chimpanzees accepted Goodall's presence. Well, we may find that in the passage, but it makes the mistake that we anticipated. It's true, but too specific. We might see the reverse on a detail question, where there is an answer that's true, but too broad for the scope of the question. We know this question is broad, and A is only mentioned in paragraph 2. A broad question needs to be about the passage as a whole. Let's take a look at B. In some form or other, I see that this answer is mentioned in more than one place. Remember, we are focused on elimination, so we are searching for bad answers. Let's keep this for now. Answer choice C is a classic wrong answer type. It's mostly right and partly wrong. The scientific research Goodall was conducting in laboratories. A lot of that sounds really good and fits with things in the passage, but there's one key part that ruins it. Taking a look at D, this answer is another classic wrong answer. Extreme language like all, never, absolute, inevitable, must be, etc. are almost always wrong. Considering the subjective nature compared to math or grammatical rules, the test maker puts too great a burden on himself with extreme language. It only takes one example to break an extreme statement. They like wishy-washy language like probably, most likely, could be, that can be more easily supported and defended. And lastly, E. We see recycled language, and this is another very popular wrong answer type. They take words from the passage and put them together, but they lose the meaning. Taking exact words from the passage is the verbal equivalent of cannot be determined from the information given that we saw in the math section. Think again about high and low scoring students, Heidi and Lee. Lee doesn't understand the passage. In fact, Lee may not even know English, but he recognizes the same words and symbols from the passage in the answer choice and chooses it. Lily completely understands the passage and also chooses it. Therefore, you have the problem again that the test maker has not separated the two students, which is their goal. Now that gives me a quick opportunity to talk about what right answer choices look like, because they are designed in a way as well. There are three ways the test maker can design a right answer. The most common is what we see in B. They use synonyms to disguise the right answer. Investigating and discovering similarities between chimpanzees and people from answer choice B in the passage is written as scientists hope that studying these animals would lead to insights about human evolution. And up until this time, anthropologists considered tool-making a distinctly human characteristic, and lastly, blur the lines distinguishing humans from apes can all be written in a different way. Test makers can just say that studying is the same as investigating, that discovering similarities is the same as finding out you are not distinct, or the same as blurring lines of distinguishment. Let's also check out the recycled language in E and notice what they've done with their wrong answer that's trying to trick us. Jane Goodall studying how to fashion tools. Well, we can see Jane Goodall studying and fashion tools in three different places. But this is not what the meaning of the passage is about. There are two other types of right answer I will not demonstrate here. They can use the transitive property, like for instance if the passage in one place says that all chimpanzees are apes, and in another place says that all apes are primates, a correct answer might say that all chimpanzees are primates. And the last type is the most difficult and fortunately the rarest. One bad answer surrounded by impossibly bad answers. It is not necessary to master either of those two in order to score very well, though. Let's look at one more. Take a moment and read the short passage. All right, let's look at question 6 and see what we would do if we ran into this. Which of the following best describes a contrast made in the passage? That's going to be pretty key because any answer that doesn't have a contrast in it will automatically be wrong. A. Although seemingly simple, the haiku is used to introduce young children to poetry. That's not a contrast. Simplicity and introduction to young children is actually more likely to be something that goes the same direction rather than the opposite direction. What we'll see in answer choice D, the correct answer, is that it does the same thing we saw in the previous correct answer. Although and while mean the same thing. Expressing eternal themes is the same as a haiku can seem timeless. And ephemeral means brief and passing. But even without that knowledge, the student could answer correctly, because we can see that B, C, and E all have some sort of issue. B says that they are relatively simple and difficult to understand, but it doesn't say anywhere that they are difficult to understand. The haiku enjoys worldwide popularity, although most haiku poets are Japanese. That isn't a contrast. The haiku is fine to enjoy worldwide popularity, and most haiku poets are Japanese. Either way would be fine. There isn't a definite contrast there. In fact, when it comes to flamenco dancing, which is a Spanish dance, there are actually more flamenco dancers in Japan than in Spain. Worldwide popularity and origin do not have to have any sort of relationship, certainly not a contrasting one. Answer choice E does have a contrast between the lengthy history and a recent phenomenon. However, there's nothing in the passage that says anything about the lengthy history in Japan, or that it's a recent phenomenon of its popularity worldwide. Regardless if this is true or not, it does not say it in the passage. All right, so we've come to the end, and I hope that I've answered most of the questions at the beginning, and I also hope that we've seen what the test can do and what it can't do. Let's make sure, before we go, that these other questions on the left side have also been answered. The first one is that our core approach is to beat the test. It's not to learn anything more than we need. It's not to teach students like a math tutor or an English teacher, but rather to see the test from the designer's perspective. We follow an 8-step process that is entirely thorough yet efficient. No competitors employ all of our methods, and few others have created their own material the way that we have. And lastly, what kind of score improvement could be expected? The classes are 20 hours of instruction with 3 diagnostic tests and a bonus session near test day. We also have a homework session every Friday to answer any questions before class on weekends. This question, though, about what score improvement can be expected, has so many variables, especially depending on the student. So please see our website under Info and Scoring for the test that applies to your student. We have pages and pages of information on this sort of thing. Thank you, everybody, for listening. If you have any further questions, please visit the website. And if their question isn't answered there, send me a message. My contact information is easy to find on the website. Thanks again. Bye-bye.